What's up, everybody? This is Pastor Mike Darnell, and I'm here with my wonderful wife, Pastor Ghilaine.
Hey, everybody.
We are the pastors of Excel Church in the East Cobb, Marietta area, and we are excited. We've been doing these podcasts. This is part 4 or episode number 4. Today, we're going to be talking about love and relationships.
Yes.
For most people, February is a month where people are thinking about love because of the obvious holiday that's in the world. They call it Valentine's Day. Obviously, as believers, we don't necessarily celebrate Valentine's Day, but obviously a lot of people still use it as a time to focus on their love and their relationships, which I think there's nothing wrong with that. So
right.
let's talk about love and relationships, because love and relationships are very challenging whether you're married or you are a single. So get ready. We're going to talk about it right now.
Let's go.
All right. Well, welcome to the podcast, everyone. If you are in the East Cobb area or anywhere within the driving distance of the Atlanta Metro, we have people that drive from an hour to this place every Sunday. We have, right now, while you're watching this, we have 2 services, 9 and 11. But check the website, because we are soon to move to our 3rd service. Make sure we haven't, by the time you see this, make sure we haven't moved to the 3rd service. Mm-hmm. But 9 and 11, or just check the website to be sure of service times. So it is going to be a phenomenal day. Maybe you are out of church, or maybe you go to our church now. I think this episode is going to help you tremendously with your marriage or your singleness, dealing with love and relationships. So the way we wanted to start this out was, how to live that kingdom life, whether you're through your marriage or through your singleness, because obviously before you come to God and before you connect with God, maybe before you had a relationship with God, relationships is at the front of a lot of people's mind. Yeah. Right? Relationships is something that, from early in your life, you want someone. You just feel like you need to connect with someone. You feel like even when you're in middle school, high school, you're looking for, boyfriends, girlfriends, which, I could get into a whole history lesson of how culture shaped that desire bigger than what it should have been. Mm-hmm. And how kingdoms, ancient kingdoms, or in the Bible, marriages and relationships were not necessarily put together that way. Right. However, in the modern day, the way we are dealing with it, there are a lot of you out there who are married and you feel frustrated. Yeah. Or you're married and maybe you are new to the kingdom and you're trying to figure out, how do I live the greatest potential out of this marriage? How do we do it, God's way? So there's a lot to talk about, but if you're single also, you're going to enjoy this as well. So everybody stay there and let's get into it. Let me first talk about, Pastor Ghilaine, how we met. Okay. How we met, because she always tells this story wrong.
I was going to say, we have to tell it the right way, though.
You always tell it wrong. You always tell it like, listen, I'm a guy who's very, I have some game. You know what I mean?
Here we go.
Like I'm not corny. Mm-hmm. If you want to say, I'm not without some moves. I got some moves, some of you guys out there, you got some moves, right? So when I met her, she's going to tell it in a way that makes me sound like I didn't have no moves or no, right? But first of all, we met at church. Now, This is not how everybody meets, but no matter how you met your spouse, let us tell our story, and then we'll get over into some other ways that people meet and deal with things. But listen, I was born again in my early 20s. I'm in my early 40s now, so I've been walking with God for almost 20 years and serving God for almost the whole time that I've been born again. And so when I was in church, I was sitting on the front row, serving at the church. It was a big mega church in South Carolina. And I was serving there, faithfully and becoming a man of God. And, actually, when I met my wife, I was already traveling the world and preaching. So at that point, but, I sat on the front row every day, and all of a sudden these girls, women, would come up to me, and this actually happened to me quite a bit. and I never liked when people try to match make me with someone. But, this lady came up to me and said, "Oh, I have this person you must meet. She's beautiful and, you would love her and this and that. Do you want to meet her?" And I was like, "No, I don't want to meet her." And it was my wife.
He didn't even want to meet me.
Eventually, I had never seen her. It's a big church. I had never seen her before. Didn't know her name. Never heard of her. And so I said, "No, I don't want to meet this person." So they kept trying to play matchmaker with us. And, eventually we did meet in the front of the church. But prior to us meeting, we actually met at the altar after a church service. So the pastor said amen. It was on a Wednesday night. He dismissed us as a church. And then so I'm standing around in the altar just chit-chatting. I'm standing with the pastor that I was serving under at the time. And somebody brought her over to me and said, this is the woman that I was talking about. Prior to that, though, they were trying to matchmake us, and was being introduced to me without me knowing it. So there were ladies telling her about me. She was on a women's retreat.
It was one time. It wasn't like they were doing it every week. It was.
Was she okay? But she was on a women's retreat, and they were talking about this is what some of y'all might be doing now.
Yeah.
In your everyday life. Okay, you're talking about the potential men that are available in your church, or potential men available in
because
your
I was,
life.
Like you, I was really focused on just my walk with Christ. And so I wasn't, they were talking about these men at the church and who's a great potential, this and that. And I was like, I'm not that interested because I'm focused on me, focused on what I'm doing. And so they were like, "But there's this one guy," and they started describing him. And then I was like, okay, well then, I'll meet him if he's that great, like y'all are saying. So
no, she didn't say that. She's already messing the story up.
Well, I didn't.
What did you actually say?
I said, well, if he's all that, if he's all that, well, then he's my husband. And I was being funny, but yet not being funny. You know what I mean?
They were describing me.
Yeah.
I had a whole women's meeting. All of them were talking about me.
No.
And then she said, "Well, if he's all that, he's my husband."
Yeah, I said, so if he's all, being funny, I said, they're describing, like women do, we do that. We're like, there's this guy, he's nice, he's this, he's that, he's that. And I was like, well, if he's all that, then he's my husband, being funny. And so then they...
So after that, some of your friends, somehow they started trying to play matchmaker.
Right.
And they would call, one time they called me and said, a friend of both of our mutual friend called me, and I still didn't know her, but he said, "Hey, I'm going out with this other girl.
Right.
You want to double with me and her? We'll go to the movies and you can meet this other girl.
Right.
And you can meet her." And I was like, "No, I don't want to."
So because I saw him after this retreat. I saw you
after the retreat. She started eyeing me at church.
At church, I did. I said, "Oh, okay, that's him." Okay, and so then they were like, "Well, then we're going to introduce you. We're going to introduce you to him." And I was like, "Okay." So then the different women were trying, but then I had a friend of mine who's more older, mature. And ladies, you need somebody mature, older, who knows what they're doing. To don't let people play around with relationships and try to matchmake when they don't know what they're doing. They'll just make you look stupid. So I have a lady that I trusted. She said, "You know what? I'm going to do it because I do know him. I do know the pastor he's serving under. And actually, I served under the same pastor too." And so she said, "I will do it." And that's
before I did, not at the same time.
I mean, before you did, yeah. So not at the same time. But then that's when she said, "Well, I'm going to bring you one Sunday or one Wednesday. I'll bring you to the altar to meet him and just introduce you." And I said, "Okay."
So she knew that was going to happen.
Yeah, I knew that was going to happen.
She dressed herself up nice.
Yep. Yep.
So
no shame.
These are tips. It's not any shame.
Yeah,
you
absolutely
got what you
not. Yep. Stop.
You got what you wanted. So she dressed herself up, and the lady comes up to me and says, "Hey, Pastor Mike, the girl that I wanted you to meet, she's right here actually." So she turns around and yells up the aisle and calls her name. And that was kind of
that part
the
was
wrong
weird.
way of doing
that was weird.
But so anyway, she pulls her down to the front, and I still really didn't see her from a distance. But when she got closer and the people kind of moved out of our way, I was shaking somebody else's hand, as a matter of fact, talking to someone else. So then when I turned...
What'd you do when you turned?
To meet her, I did, listen, this is where she tells stories about the meeting. So I turned to face
Demonstrate.
her. I'll demonstrate. And I said, and as a gentleman, I said, I think I said, how are you?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think I said, hi, how are you? But yes, in my mind.
No, in his face.
In my face too. My face and my mind were like, my goodness
said,
gracious, she is fine.
How are you?
I did not say that. See, this is where.
If I can admit that I got dressed and was like, okay, I'm interested.
But that's normal.
Then that's also, you can admit that.
No man does what you just said. Or at least I don't.
Oh my God.
I did not go, hi, how are you? What kind of. No, that don't even. Everybody that knows me knows that would not happen. So as a gentleman, I didn't show emotion. I said, let me try again. I said, hi, how are you? Trying to be,
we'll take
very
it
softly spoken, but maybe my face did say, because my face froze, kind of like, wow, like she is fine. And I did not actually realize that was the girl. At that moment, I didn't know that's the one that they had been trying to hook me up with. So, 7 months later, I think it was 7 months later. 7 months from that day, we were married. So, okay, that's not the journey for everyone. But what we always say to people is, listen, meeting a person who is already deeply involved or deeply committed to God is the best way to do it. Meeting someone at church is not foolproof. But if you listen to some of these things we're going to say today, whether you're single or married, being at church for the married folks is an anchor to your relationship. You have to have it if you're going to be successful. If you're single, it's an anchor to your singleness, and it's a great place, one of the top places to meet your future person. Because obviously, if you're God, you don't have to meet the person at church, but there's a really great chance, because if you're looking for a godly relationship, there's a really great chance that God is going to arrange that in some way where you meet the person at your church. You might not, but if you meet them somewhere else, they should definitely be anchored deeply into a church, and it should be a church that's similar to yours, not a background that's completely opposite. Which I know people who do that as well, but we're talking about the most effective kingdom relationships, because I actually know people that are opposite in their faiths. Muslim and Christian in the same house. Those things, if you coexist with a person of a completely different faith, then you neutralize each other. There's no way that you can both follow God and one person believes God is this way and one believes it's that way, or two different gods or whatever. So you actually have to kind of nullify your faith, and you end up just being, well, let's do the wisest worldly things we can do, which are obviously not going to work out either. So let's talk about this. 7 months later, we were married. The process that I had learned, I took my wife through it, and we call it, well, most people in olden days call it courting. Courting, when your grandparents were little, was a common thing, but courting in a Christian kingdom way is something else. So you want to start a courting process with a person, and if it is courting, by the way, we're going to do a whole series on this at some point, but courting is designed to lead people to marriage.
Yeah.
So when you are courting someone, if you meet someone, you got to have it in your mind that I'm going to keep my emotions out of this, keep physical touch out of this. I'm not even going to cross those physical barriers until I know this thing can go to marriage. Because what you're going to do is inadvertently tie yourself emotionally, soulishly to someone that you may not. Don't start playing marriage with them.
Right.
Playing like you're in a relationship deeper than what it is, and you still are unsure of the wedding date. So courting sets all of that stuff in the right place. And that's what we did. So I walked her through that. Now, some of the keys to this, we're going to talk to the singles first and then the married people. But if you are single, number one, the first thing I said is meeting someone at church is a great idea. What do you think, Pastor Ghilaine?
Absolutely. Because number one, you're under the same leadership, getting the same messages weekly. And when you do meet that person in church, it can't be a person who comes like once a year to church. That's not what we're saying. It has to be someone committed to your church.
Not even once a year, once a quarter, like occasionally.
Yeah. No, they have
a casual Christian.
It has to be somebody who goes to the church, who is part of that ministry, who's, not just, again, like you're saying, not once in a while, because again, you're learning the same things. You're going to grow up in the same way, and whatever happens in the house of God, right? That's going to be the same thing that happens in your home. You're going to take that into your home.
Yeah.
So you're going to grab the big picture in the church and take that home. If you don't have that, then you're going to have, again, what you were saying, two opposing teams living in the same home.
Yes. So if you are single, there's some tips to this. Now, duration, like how long can you be single before you start getting overwhelmed by your singleness? So with my journey and Pastor Ghilaine, so here's the funny thing about us. We both ended up in the same mindset before we met each other, which is why I think it was so powerful. Just like you, if you're single, you probably dated and viewed relationships in the world from the worldly point of view. Even if you had good parents, right? They may have not taught you these things. So when you come out of a world where you can basically, date someone in a very, loose way, you might even have your own little boundaries that you have, but they're not God's boundaries. And you end up, physically with each other in a short period of time. You might even have your little rule if you're a lady, 3 weeks, 3 months rule. Like, if it gets past 3 months, then it's serious enough for us to be together in an intimate way. By the way, men don't have that rule. Men can go 3 hours. All right, we can know you 3 hours and be like, okay, you ready? I'm ready. Right? Men don't have a 3 week or 3 month. It's a woman's rule because women see the relationship differently than men do. Men compartmentalize everything. We don't see that sleeping with a person or being with a person in that way is equal to a commitment. We're not, naturally we can move around and not feel connected to anyone in that way. But a woman can't. The moment she does that with a person, like that's like, I gave you my life and I trusted you, So it's just completely different. So men also, you have to learn how they think and not move beyond that yourself. So you have to, when you're single, you don't, in the world, you don't think about those types of rules because you can basically make up your own rules, right? But if you're now, okay, I get saved or I'm being, I'm coming back to God in a serious way. I'm going to church in a serious way. You're a single man. You're a single woman in the church. And it's been, for myself, I stopped dating and started focusing on God because I was in a really, bad situation mentally. I was a young man, life just was, chaotic to me, right? I was just in a really dark place. And so going after God, I started to see that I needed to focus on God. And once I connected with God, women became to me a thing where I said, you know what? I'm not going to pursue a relationship with a woman until I am a proper, put together whole man. You know what I mean? And even though initially I wanted to be with a woman, and that's the part where most people start falling apart, right? You want a relationship. You want to be with someone. You want to do those things that people get to do when they're in a relationship. You want to go out with someone. You want to sit and watch movies with someone. You want to laugh with someone. You want to talk on the phone with someone and have a great conversation. And you want to do all those other things too, right? Eventually. So yes, that's part of it. But what if it's been, a year and you haven't had any prospects, nobody who can fit that kingdom mold for you? Because now you've just raised the bar from, I used to be able to date any guy, no matter his faith, right? I didn't even consider his faith really. I just consider little superficial things. Does he have a job? Some people don't even consider that. You should. Does he have a career? Does he have a job? Is he stable? Is he, nice? Is he cute? Is he, right? You had all these superficial things. Now you got to add in the factor of, is he a man of God? And so you've, cut your pool of men down to such a small thing. Guess what it's going to take now to land a man of God, the proper man of God? It's going to take God. Because once you take the equation out of it, that you have to make this happen and that you have to judge all these men based on their superficial qualities, And yeah, you have to use wisdom in looking at those qualities, but now you've shrank the pool of possibilities down. When you add, is he a man of God? Not does he go to church, not does he say he's a Christian. When you add, is he a man of God? Can he lead my home spiritually? Can he lead me spiritually? You've shrank that pool down to, it's way down. But here's the good thing. The quality is much higher. So I'm not telling you you're going to have to wait, but you might have to wait. Now, when you're waiting, this is when it gets really tricky because you are longing for this person. And in fact, because you know it's part of the human journey to be a community, you want to connect with someone. That's a godly desire. You're thinking of it all the time. And because you're thinking of it all the time, it's really big in your mind, right? And so you got to learn how to deal with those spaces of time where you don't know, is this thing going to last? What if I have to, as a man, I thought, because, most men are not, how can I say it nicely? Most men are not raised in a way where they think that being without knowing a woman, in the Bible term, knowing a woman, before they get married, most of them are active. Most men are active. So to turn that off until you meet a woman of God and walk her down the aisle after you've already activated that desire. Same thing with a woman. If you have activated that desire, or if you are activating that desire by yourself, you know what I'm talking about. If you are handling business on your own, that's the nicest way I can say this on YouTube and social media. You're activating a desire that's going to drive you insane when you're trying to wait. But it doesn't have to be that way. So we're talking about the gap.
Yeah.
When we're waiting, how do we handle that?
While you're waiting, the problem is you're waiting, but yet that's all of your focus is on the fact that you are single and want to be married. You should be enjoying your singleness. You should be enjoying life. Singleness does not have to equal loneliness. Right. And I think we have taken those two words and put them together. Single, lonely, single, lonely. No, it doesn't have to be like that. You should be focusing on who you are, focus on the big picture that God has, and where do you fit in that big picture? You know what I'm saying? There's a big desire God has for the church and God has for the earth. You fit in there somewhere. Concentrate on that. Learn who you are in Christ and get some friends. Go hang out with your girlfriends or your guy friends and have some fun. And I would say this, don't make all of your friends married people because that's just going to bring that desire to the forefront all the time. Listening to their marriage talks, seeing how, your friend is with his wife or with her husband, it's going to always put that desire to the forefront. So I'm not saying the desire shouldn't be there. I'm saying you shouldn't be overrun by it every single moment of your life. Go have some fun, go to the beach, get some friends and go have lunch together. Yeah. Concentrate on you, Yeah.
So let's take these one at a time though.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when you are by yourself, mm-hmm. having friends, some of y'all are sitting there saying, okay, I don't have any friends like that. And I don't have a plethora of friends that I can do beach trips with. And then if I'm desiring this every day, we can't go to the beach every day. No. We can't go to the movies every day. Mm-hmm. What about all these other days, right? We have to figure out something more long-term to deal with this, right? You do want to have some friends you can go hang out with. That's mm-hmm. a great idea. That's going to be not that available often. That's mm-hmm. not that often available. What you actually have to, end up doing is you need to start to figure out what is your purpose, mm-hmm. as my wife was saying, what is your purpose in the kingdom, right? And start to serve that purpose. Because here's what happens. Once you tap into the meaning of your existence on the earth, it does not necessarily come with the idea of a relationship with it. It's more so of a function and a presence that you serve on the earth. Mm-hmm. So when you tap into that, this is what happened to me. Yeah. This is what happened to her. Yeah. Single, I started serving at my church. Mm-hmm. That's a great way to do this. But you want to serve God's purposes, whether you're at church or not. But I started serving at my church, and that's mm-hmm. I would encourage that for every person. And just get your mind on the things of God.
Yes.
Get your mind off of yourself and your needs. Start serving other people's needs. What happens is that starts to grow inside of you as the big reason why you get up every day.
Mm-hmm.
That should grow. Serving God's purpose on the earth and focusing on who God is, learning God. This is the best time of your life to study your Bible.
That's right.
This is the best time in your life to have the schedule that belongs to you.
Because when you get married, that's going to change.
Exactly. So spending hours in your Bible is not possible when you become a mother.
That's right.
Or a wife. Mm-hmm. Even if you have had children before and you're remarrying later in life, once you become a wife, you can spend time in the Bible, but you're not going to have the freedom you have right now.
No.
And so you got time now to build a bank.
That's right.
An index of, ammunition of things you're going to need as you go into the next phase of God's purpose for you.
And also in that process of absolutely. And in that process of learning God, you actually find out not only who you are, but the things that, the kind of person that you need to be with.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Because you start to learn what God has placed in you.
You figure out who you are.
Yeah, you figure out who you are. And so you're saying, you know what, this type of person that I am will go great with this kind of person. Yes. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people, they will get with someone who is going totally opposite direction in life than they are. And it's because you have never stopped to figure out who you are, what God has placed in you, and where He wants you to go. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So the vision that God has inside of you, you have never looked in it. You've never explored it. And now you don't know, who you should match up with. Yes.
So you're figuring out who you are during this time. Even after you know who you are, now you're just serving that purpose.
Yeah.
Every day. And I promise you, this is what happened to me. All right. The desire for a relationship will go from I need a relationship to I can't be in a relationship if it takes me away from this.
Exactly.
And when you get to the place where the reason you are on the earth is to serve God's kingdom and His purposes, and that cannot be interrupted by a bad relationship, now you are getting closer to being ready for a relationship. And because here's what derails people. One bad relationship steals years from your life.
Absolutely.
One bad, and usually it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship, but that's what we're talking about today. But one bad relationship takes years from your life of being effective and producing the life that God was trying to actually give you. Because a relationship can hinder what you are able to do on the earth.
Right.
Believe it or not, many people are capped because they married the wrong person. And many of you might be frustrated by that right now. You love God. You want to serve God, a man or a woman, and you are capped, especially, hear me, especially the women.
Absolutely.
Because if I am godly and I meet an ungodly woman, a woman will more easily surrender her life over to my faith and go my direction because I'm the man, then a man will surrender his life to a woman's faith. Now, it's not impossible for a woman to influence a man and to get his attention turned to God, but it is a very tall task.
Yeah.
And many, many women are out there right now frustrated that you can't get the worldliness out of this man, and he's just that way. I'm not saying he's not a good person.
Right.
I'm saying you've realized that God has this bigger thing for you and this marriage, and he's just not interested.
So you had a standard in the beginning when you first start desiring a man. You have standards. You say, I want this type of man of God. I want him to act like this. He's going to do this, this, and this. But in between that time, when you're waiting, you just drop those standards. And so you'll go for the first one you see because of loneliness. And that's why loneliness is so dangerous, because it'll cause you to drop the standard that you have, which is standards when they're not ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. You have to have standards,
So loneliness is a problem. So again, hopefully you got that piece right there. You want to fill your life up with serving God. That's got to become the biggest thing. And believe me, the desire for a person will change. It's not that you won't want a person anymore. It's that you actually be afraid the wrong person will mess up your pursuit for God. All right. If you're married and you're sitting there thinking like, man, this is already a messed up situation that I'm in, we have some different advice for that. But a couple of more things. If you're single and you're waiting, so you have to anchor yourself to this. Where does loneliness actually come from?
Mm-hmm.
It comes from feeding your flesh, right? You came out of a world where your flesh and your personal desires was the top of the list of things to do. Loneliness is not a thing that can't be managed. Loneliness comes from your desire to want somebody.
Yeah.
And that desire to want somebody is put there because you're constantly feeding your flesh. So this is the next tip. You have to get rid of and crucify and put down the flesh.
What are some of the things you can do?
You have to take the flesh's control away. Okay?
Tell them some of the things you can do to control the flesh.
All right, some of the things that I had to do when I became a man of God and you have to do as a man or a woman is you have to stop putting yourself in environments where love and relationships are the promoted thing. So I was so sensitive, and everybody is, because now I'm a pastor for many years. I know this about everyone.
Mm-hmm.
If you're real fleshly, I'm not saying you're evil, but if you're real fleshly, that means your personal senses and feelings are driving everything. Listening to R&B music, most of it is not good to listen to anyway. But let's just say it's just R&B music or slow jams or jazz music or any of that slow, love music that puts you in the mood for a relationship. Puts you in the mood to have someone sitting there enjoy. Because all of those types of environments, whether it's a club, and I'm not talking about just the worldly clubs that were the wild clubs. I'm talking about any environment. I don't care if it's, a grown-up environment where it's just a jazz bar or you're going to see some event and it's a place that most couples would go to.
Oh, exactly.
And the people are playing music and talking about or movies that are the romance movies or the R&B songs you play in your car.
Even if they're like the more innocent ones, like Hallmark movies, but putting that over, playing that all the time
because they're about marriages and they're about relationships. And you can handle that on a small level, but when you first make this transition to where I'm gonna wait for a man or woman of God, those things will cause your flesh to rise up.
Yeah.
And you have to stop exciting your flesh for marriage and the things of marriage. You got to stop listening to the love songs. You got to stop hanging around married folks that are always talking about things that married people do.
Right.
And all of that stuff. And you got to find there's a different world out there because there's a lot of biblical characters that were not married that fulfilled their purpose in the kingdom.
So basically,
marriage is not required to fulfill a purpose. It is something that when you do get married, Paul said it this way. He said, don't get married for any reason. In other words, don't get married at all for any reason, he said. And then he said, right after that, he said, but if you get married, don't get divorced for any reason. In other words, marriage is a great thing. And what he's stressing is, don't just jump into it.
Right.
You need to make sure this is a godly, a kingdom connection. And once you're in it, if you do it right, don't let anything tear it up. Don't let anything break it up.
So basically, your desire for God's purpose on your life has to be stronger than the desire of marriage. Because if that desire for purpose is stronger than anything else, you will be patient and wait for the right man.
You'll defend your singleness, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did. That's why I didn't want to meet her. I was very happy. Single.
Same here. It was like, I want to do the will of God, and I'm not going to let just anybody come in and spoil it. And when it's the right guy, he and I are going to go in the same direction. We're not going to go in the opposite direction to where it ruins the purpose that God has for me. So again, that desire for what God wants, God's will in my life, has to become stronger than the desire to just be with somebody and feel those lonely voids, the lonely places in your life. If it's not, you're going to just allow somebody to come in because you don't want to be alone at night.
Yeah.
And so it has to be absolutely strong.
So there is a place where you can get, if you stop feeding your flesh these things, you will get to the place where you enjoy being alone at night. You enjoy the freedom of your schedule. You enjoy, in fact, you'll look at married people and say, my goodness, I am enjoying singleness so much, I don't know how they do it.
Yeah.
But not in a way that you don't want to be married, but in a way of like, when I do get married, I can't let marriage stop my purpose.
Exactly.
So you'll be looking for a person in a much different way. And if it never, this is the place I got to. Lord, if it never happens, because I'm sitting there, you know, thinking, I was like, wow, I have to think about marriage now from being a young single man. I was like, oh my gosh. So now I can't do, you know, any of those things that people typically would do in the world system of dating. I can't do all of that.
Right.
You can't be physical with a woman. You can't do any of that. You can't take care of business yourself. I know there might be kids watching, but you don't want to do anything against your own body or excite your flesh in that way, because it just takes you down that path where you're going to make dumb decisions. Because when you're starving, you'll eat anything. And you'll start scratching stuff off the list. Well, he said he goes to church.
Right.
Where she said that she, you know, generally this is a man problem for women. But if you're a man and you're a man of God, that's the first step. You don't typically have that issue, because if you meet a woman and she said, yeah, I'm a Christian, do you go to church? Well, I try to. Listen, for you, I would say this, you can pursue that woman. But if it's reversed, you better beware.
That's right.
If a man says, yeah, I read my Bible sometimes and go to church sometimes, that's a red flag.
I would not take that chance.
That's
ladies.
A red flag, big red flag. But a woman, if she even has the foundation,
right,
she will quickly jump onto your way of life and go your direction, because that's what they are made to do. Men are made to lead. We don't want anyone telling us what to believe. We don't want anyone telling us where we got to be. We don't want anyone saying, you better get up and after you've worked all week, get up and go to church early Sunday morning when that's my day off and I watch football, you know, or spend my days doing this.
Right.
You're going to have a hard time changing that man. He's got if it's a woman chasing a man, he has to already be in love with Jesus. Already. If it's a man chasing a woman, she's got to be interested in Jesus. But she don't have to be her life totally committed to it.
She'll get there.
Again, I would say you can pursue her. I wouldn't say marry her unless you see that she is definitely coming to your side of the aisle. And if she's a, you know, woman who is head over heels bent on having a career instead of having a relationship with God, you probably need to leave her alone too.
And I also want to say this, because I think that just like women think they can persuade men into, you know, becoming more godly. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying I would never take that chance because it's not likely. I also think we think that we can persuade God to do things our way. Like, meaning you say, God, I want a man of God, but you know, because you grow impatient, you'll go to a club or somewhere that's not a godly environment.
You're not
to
going to meet a man
someone.
of God in any environment like that.
Exactly. And so if you told God, I want a man of God, God will say, okay, these are the things you have to do. These are the things you have to become. This is the type of person that is a man of God. You're not going to persuade him that, well, Lord, I mean, I love you, but I'm going to go over here. And I'm sure he'll be there. He's not going to be there. So you might as well just stop, you know, canceling or prolonging the thing that God has for you by trying to go somewhere else to get what God says is not there. It's not out there. It's not out there. You're not going to find that man out there or woman.
So as you guys are pursuing this idea, you just listen. If you're overwhelmed by your desire for a relationship, you got to start cutting the flesh away. You have to do this or it's going to overwhelm you. It's going to be overwhelming. All right. So, and if you're a man, the same thing. You have to for a man, it's very difficult to live in a world where women are more comfortable showing their body parts and skin tight clothing and revealing clothing. It's hard to walk out of your front door as a man because men are the primary foundations of society. Men generally are driving society in a majority of the ways. So obviously the devil is going to attack the men to try to knock the men down. Well, so do the marketplaces. So do, I mean, women sell everything. Women sell the cars. Women, they put a woman on the magazine, right? They sell sports. They put a half-dressed woman beside the boxers when they're getting ready for their match. And right, why? It's because they want to draw the men in. And so in a lot of those ways, you have to guard yourself from exciting your flesh, or you are just going to keep chasing after a woman.
Yeah.
And if you are a man addicted to like pornography, this is a sabotaging, demonic world that is trying its best to get you off track with God and make you so fleshly you can't hear God, sense God, and you're going to make really, really blind decisions and go down a path that is very detrimental. So you have to have the discipline to cut that off. All right, you have to have, don't think that soft music is harmless when you're single. Don't you listen, that world is just not for you right now. And it's okay to cut things off. Do yourself a favor, be good to yourself, and cut your flesh off.
Yeah, and ladies, you can't, the opposite of what you're saying. You can't go out there showing things. If you're a godly woman, just showing cleavage, showing all these things,
your hips and your thighs and your midriff, and
thinking that I'm going to get a man of God like that. You're not going to get a husband like that. You're not going to get a man of God, doing those things. So, and again, you don't want to be the reason that somebody is struggling.
Exactly.
All of us are God's children. Why would you want to be the person that leads that person to struggle? If men are struggling like that, be a woman who presents herself. You can
look
still
great.
Be cute. Absolutely, you can still be cute, but let's have some class still.
You can be attractive and draw a man's attention without showing.
I did not wear
the things
anything
that he should only see on wedding night.
Yeah, exactly. For real,
a couple of tips for that. Listen, when you are feeling like you need support, you should go to your church and set up meetings with some of the pastors or whatever that's in place. If you start getting weak, it's better than talking to, your friends who are going to give you some terrible advice.
Right.
Unless you have some really good friends that are, not going to be biased towards you, but tell you the truth and help you, support you in that and pray with you. Other than that, I wouldn't talk to any single friend. Don't talk to your single friends, and don't talk to married people unless you know that they are not just your buddies, and because most of your friends are struggling with the same stuff.
Exactly.
So this is what we've noticed. Like when you're a single struggling person, your friends generally are single struggling people, divorced people, going to give you some terrible advice. Don't go on social media and listen to the YouTube gurus that don't even know your situation. Go to the church is God's system to help you get back on track. Go to your church and say, I need to meet with some of the pastors, somebody here who can talk to me about, how to, or get some support on how to manage my singleness. Right. And if listen, we've given you a lot of tips already on how to do that.
And don't think that, my situation's different. I'm so strong that I can, go out and do things the way the world does. I can date worldly and I'll be okay. I know my limit. I'm not going to sleep with this man, whatever. It's been done before and many have failed. Listen to sound wisdom and be guided by your church. You're not inventing anything new. You're not doing anything that has not been done. Trust godly advice. And the tips that we're telling you today.
So let us talk for about 5 or 10 minutes here to the married people. Married people, if you are married, there's a lot of scenarios, right, in the love month that will make your marriage successful kingdom marriages. One, you got to understand this. Your marriage is not about you.
Yeah.
Your marriage is not about you. All right? Your marriage is a vehicle to glorify God and to expand the kingdom into the earth. So if you notice this, the world today is promoting perverted marriages, same-sex marriages, these types of things. We obviously know these things are not godly. But why are they being promoted? Because if you're the devil, you want to put the opposite into culture to neutralize what is the proper.
Right.
Right? That's what you want to do. So you want young people going after trends that they see of trans people marrying, sexual confusion or gender confusion or same-sex marriages and this and that. You want young people not to even, Because what happens is young people start thinking that they want that when really it's just a trend.
Yeah.
It's not that you were born that way. It's just that when society is trending, people start experimenting. And then when you taste something with your flesh, whether it be a radical relationship with another same-sex person, and you go, wow, what an adventure.
Yeah.
Or wow, what, that excitement that you feel, first of all, it's evil. Secondly, it's tickling your flesh. So no wonder you had fun with it for a minute. But the fun lasts for a minute and it ends in destruction.
Yeah.
Right? It totally starts to destroy your identity. And marriages, we are real marriages between one man and one woman. That's the only real marriage, biblical marriage. All right? Started with Adam and Eve, one man, one woman. And then it ended with Jesus and the church. One man, one woman. Okay? Now, I know in between there were some messed up marriages, some polygamy, some other things. That's not the model. The model is the one God started with and the one he ended with. All right? One man, one woman. And then it ended with one man, one woman. All right? That is the picture of how heaven and earth, God and his church interact.
Yeah.
God deals with only his church when it comes to intimacy and reproduction and becoming disciples and becoming children of God. He deals with one entity. If we put together, I love seeing young people. There's a lot of young people, getting married all the time at our church, right? We see that on a pretty regular basis, or we know about it, right? And it's great because, marriage is not easy, but it is a thing that you can work through your issues. But if you have the foundation and you have the support for your marriage, you're going to reproduce kingdom children in the earth. You're going to reproduce a picture, even if you didn't have children, which I would encourage you to do, but you would at least reproduce the picture of God and his church between the man and the woman. That, if you feel society with a man and a woman walking around together, then you're going to point people back to their original relationship with God. Right? So,
yeah, marriage, the true picture of what the kingdom of God looks like. The true picture of what, like you said, Jesus and her bride, the church, the true picture of heaven and earth, earth depending on heaven, just like the two will depend on each other in a marriage. So it's a beautiful thing. And again, God is about us multiplying, and into the earth what his desire is. And when you have godly children, kingdom children, we're doing exactly what he told us to do in Genesis. So absolutely, marriage is beautiful when it's done right, and it's not easy, but you have to stick with it, and you have to remember the purpose of it and what you're saying.
Yeah. So marriages, if you're in one of those marriages where you're unequally yoked or you feel unequally yoked, first of all, listen, don't quit on your marriage. There's some times where the marriage doesn't work out. Okay. If it doesn't work out, that's not something that the Bible, wants to see. In certain cases, it's not even God's plan, but God allowed a certain things that would, like infidelity. You don't have to stick around somebody continually cheating on you.
Right.
Whether it's man or woman. I'm still not saying that can't be fixed either. I'm saying a lot of times that people would tell us that happened, and we'll say, well, gosh, do you guys want to fix this marriage? Because obviously we want to see people reconciled.
Absolutely.
And through forgiveness and other things, it can be done. But if it's not the path you take, I'm not giving you advice one way or the other. I'm just saying, in a situation like that, there are options.
Yeah.
There are options.
Yeah.
But if you are in a relationship and you're not, one of you is growing towards God and chasing God and the other one is not, it's generally, guys, the woman dating or married to a man that's not.
Yeah.
I've rarely ever seen the man, I've seen it, but rarely ever the man who is in love with God, but the woman don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I've rarely seen that. It's always the women are showing up to church. The women are showing up to the meetings. The women are coming to counseling asking, how do I reach my husband? The women.
And it's because, going back real quick to the singleness, is because when she first met him, she thought, well, she knew he wasn't going to church. He wasn't that really into it, but she thought, I can change him. And later when we get married, he'll change. And most of the time, you already knew he was like that. So now here we are, we're married, and you thought you could change him, but you can't. So you're showing up, like you're saying, to church by yourself. You're growing in your faith, and you're realizing, oh gosh, he's not changing.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you do in that case? Well, if you're the man, I think you're going to have an easier time. As long as you are an actual man of God. If you're not a man of God, you might be, no, in fact, I know so. If whatever is happening in you happens in your family.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So if you're not right with God, you need to fix that.
Yeah.
The moment you fix that, the entire family goes that direction. I think the statistics say that when a man goes to church or gets saved, both, that 98 or 97% of the time, the children and family, wife
That's
go.
amazing.
90, it's high 90s. I don't remember exact.
Mm-hmm.
But when the woman is the only one doing it, going to church, or she gets saved, it's only like, I don't know, it's a low number. It's like 60 or 50 something percent. It's a low number, right? It's not even close to the number if the man's leading that.
Yeah.
And so when the man is doing it, the whole house is doing it. If the man is acting worldly, the whole house is going to be worldly. If the man is allowing certain things, the whole house will allow it. If the man acts a certain way, the whole house picks up the behavior much quicker. If the woman is trying to lead the culture, it's very difficult. It's still going to follow the man in most cases. The children are going to be like, oh, dad doesn't go. Oh, dad's not really that concerned. Oh, dad's got a casual attitude towards it. Oh, dad goes occasionally, or, right? Men, if you want to lead your family, the first place you need to lead them is not to a job, a career, or anything, baseball practice, right? Or some sports. You need to make sure they are top priority focused on getting in the house of God. That's a foundation for their life. And that the household, not just going to church, but the household we are Bible reading, praying, and watching our media intake, television, movies, and such, to the point where we are monitoring, are these things supportive to what we believe, right? So if you're a woman and you're faced with this situation, I don't encourage women, because I get this question a lot. I don't encourage women to stick around if you're being physically abused.
No.
At all. Some women do this, right? Oh, he'll turn around. It'll come around. Listen, I don't encourage that. Or if you're being sexually, if you're being cheated on in a sense, right? Constantly. I don't encourage that. I don't necessarily encourage the divorce right away, but I do encourage maybe a separation and try to work it out.
Right.
Right? Because there's certain things you just can't sit under and be physically okay. Right? Like there's consequences.
Yeah.
However, that's the extreme. Beyond that, if you guys are just living casually together, you're good, he's good, but you are growing in this place with God, and you're like, man, we are not going to be okay. Our children are not going to be okay unless they get closer to God, especially in this crazy world. What does the woman do? All right? Well, the Bible says that the man can be sanctified by the woman, but she is going to have to be the example of the kingdom in that house. And then I believe if you can do that, ladies, first of all, you're going to be on a fight uphill. I promise it's not going to be easy. But if you can do that, not fussing at him all the time, but just showing him the benefits of the kingdom. In other words, it's working in you. It's working in your life, working in the kids. And he can start to see God's hand on stuff.
Yeah.
Right? He's more apt to come back to it. I'm not saying it'll be a 2-day event and it'll be over. I'm saying now your mission field is your husband.
Yep.
And I don't know how long this will be. But if you love him the right way and let God lead you on how you know your husband, we don't. But learn how to demonstrate what a godly woman serving a king looks like.
Yeah.
You got the same challenge that I have as a church. You got the same challenge. That challenge for us as a church, because the church is a woman in its role. We are the bride of Christ. So that means we're female in our role to God, meaning we receive God as Lord, just like the woman receives their husband as the Lord. In the Old Testament, Sarah called Abraham Lord, because that just means you're responsible for me. It's not the Lord, but my Lord is a kingdom term.
Right.
Right. So you're responsible for me. You have to take care of this house. You have to defend this house. Well, when the woman is now put in that position, the same way the church is, where there's people that come into church all the time that their life is not close to God. And guess what we have to do? We have to be a model and a voice for God to them. In the same way, they're not on track. They're not believing. Their life is messed up. They're not totally connected to God. God knows only how they wandered into church that day. It may not have been because they loved Jesus. It may be because it was their last resort.
Because if you do the opposite, if you go home fussing, if you go home with, well, my pastor said it, you're not doing it.
Definitely don't do that.
You don't even know how to pray. If you go with that, you're going to push him further away. You know, he's going to be like,
you got to go home demonstrating.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's going to be many times when you're going to have to keep silent, meaning you could, come back at him with something because he's saying something that's not right, but you're going to just have to, breathe and walk away because you're demonstrating patience. And I also want to say, don't underestimate the power of prayer. You're going to have to pray a whole lot, so not being combative is one way, but also praying a whole lot, praying and asking God and seeking God on how to go about this situation. A lot of times we don't put prayer in its proper place where it's so powerful to just go in a room and talk to God and say, God, I'm struggling in this area. I don't know what to do, concerning my husband. Help me. And he will show you.
Yeah. So what I was going to say to that is, ladies, the man has to see God coming through you. Yeah. So, for example, if you're praying a lot and you're going to church a lot, I'm going to tell you from the male perspective, listen to me carefully. Mm-hmm. If you're praying a lot and going to church a lot, but you don't have much patience, the man's going to start thinking, what good is your prayer life if every time you come out of there, you fussing at me?
Yeah.
What good is all that church attendance if when you come home, you're irate, you're impatient with the kids, you're fussing at me, you're shrugging your shoulders, you're denying me in bed, you're not serving me.
Yeah.
Isn't this God of yours supposed to make you more of a godly woman? I've had men say to me, Pastor Mike, she speaks in tongues.
And then come out cussing.
And has all that. Well, yeah. No, he'll say, like the one I'm thinking of, he says, she speaks in tongues and I'm not as, spiritually developed as she is. Mm-hmm. But isn't it that if she's got all this power and speaks in tongues and all this other stuff, how come when she gets done doing that, she doesn't have any of the fruit of God on her life? I mean, she's doing the same stuff, watching the same stuff, going to the same places, listening to the same music, talking to her friends the same way, talking to her mom the same way, talking to her family members the same way. I mean, and I don't mean in a bad way. I mean in a worldly way.
Right.
So the woman, you can't be worldly but praying.
Exactly. Yeah.
Worldly, but I go to church. I like worldly things with him. I mean, y'all sharing the same. So if you're denying him, if you got the type of household where you do all the cooking and cleaning, you do as the woman, and you do all these traditional women type jobs, and he comes home and he's working and he's providing for the most part, or even if just he's doing his part, and you're denying, because listen, men have physical needs, and there's a lot of women who punish the man, since he ain't going to church with me, he ain't a godly man, I ain't gonna let him see me or be with me and as often as he needs to.
And you can't use excuses like, well, I've been praying all day, so I don't, so you can't, you have to pray in the right times.
You're so godly that you can't clean.
You can't clean because I've been praying. I'm not going to give you this. Yeah. I'm not going in a room with you because I need to pray. Yeah. And, you can't, you just can't use the church or the prayer times to where you're denying him his time, because you're going to push him further away.
Make sure that when you pray or go to church, when you come home, he sees God's love service. Service is a big one towards him.
Yeah.
Patience. Don't serve him according to what he deserves.
Exactly.
Because that's not what God does for us. Serve him according to who he is, but he may not know it yet. Mm-hmm. And that will awaken it in him.
Yeah.
All right. So hopefully that's helpful, you guys. We could go on and on and on and on and on. Pastor Ghilaine, what is your closing remarks maybe to singles or married people? Love is in the air in this month, but what can be your closing remarks?
For the single people, I'm going to say you're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to be patient. Don't be fake about your desires, because that's another thing. We didn't really get into that, but some people are fake about their desire, meaning saying, I don't really want a man. I don't desire marriage, when inside you really do desire it. So we're not saying fake it. We're saying, you can go to God and say, God, these are things that I do want. And then be patient and let God work in you first. And then you will know the type of man that you should go with. That's number one. And then to the married women, be kind, love one another, serve each other as a couple, and keep God first in your marriage. Marriage is a beautiful thing. Don't go, if you're married, don't hang around with a bunch of single people that are telling you, he shouldn't do this and you should. They don't know your situation. They're not married. You need to find you a good married couple that godly counsel that can help you all walk through your marriage, because marriage is beautiful and God wants your marriage.
And keep your family members out of your marriage.
Please.
If you're a lady, I'm going to tell you the quickest way to turn that man off is to be talking to your mom,
yes,
or sisters or cousins or anyone about his lack of godliness or lack of performance or lack of whatever he's doing in life. Men do not like that. Keep your business your business. They don't need to be in your business, and they don't need to be rolling their eyes at him when he comes over. I'm just telling you the things that we run into all the time.
Yep.
But listen, the power of God and the presence of God is able to reconcile marriages, to keep you in singleness or marriage. These are just some tips that you can think about and pray about. But I want to encourage you right now. We are in an amazing place. Always some amazing things happening at Excel Church. Come, if you've been watching us online, come in person.
Yes.
Come and join us right now. Check the internet. Check our website or our link here somewhere on the page. Check it for the service times. See if we're still at 9 and 11. We might be at our new service times, depending on when you see this. But just check on it and join us the next week, because the church is here to serve you as you serve God on the earth. And so you don't want to be without a local assembly, and you do not want to try to sit at home and just do online church as a foundation. Online church can be for when you travel, can be for if you're far away from your church, or you're out of the state and you can't get to a great church. But it should, if you're near the church, you need to be at the church.
Yes.
Right? There's nothing like it, and it'll benefit you in your walk with God. All right. So,
and hey, we'd love to meet you.
We would love to meet you. All right. Well, anyway, God bless you guys, and we will see you on the next podcast. Share this with somebody. Let's make it go viral.